Welcome to Lund University's digital book fair. My name is Martin Degrell. I am here with Rustamjon Urinboyev, an associate professor of sociology of law and a senior researcher in Russian and Eurasian studies. And we are here to talk about this book, Migration and Hybrid Political Regimes, Navigating the Legal Landscape in Russia. And this is a book in which you investigate the very complex web of laws, formal and informal rules and regulations that migrant workers in Russia are forced to deal with on a daily basis. Before we get to the investigation itself, I wanted to explain the hybrid political regime of the book's title. Russia, you write, is neither a democracy nor conventionally authoritarian. So can you explain about that?
The term hybrid regime is employed from the literature on comparative political regimes. And after the collapse of Soviet Union, there has been a steady increase in the type of regimes that are not dictatorship or not fully democracy. And then this has been a global increase of such regimes worldwide: Russia, Turkey, many regimes in Latin America, Eastern Europe, and this is a global tendency. This is a growing trend, and this has been a tendency since the collapse of Soviet Union. And then the reason I use this term is to understand the migration processes, migrants' experiences in emerging new migration hubs worldwide that have non-democratic system of governance, and this is a global tendency. And then, by using the term of hybrid political regimes, I wanted to situate the case of Russia in a global context. Not just the study of Russia, but I wanted to say something broader than Russia, than saying that what we observe in Russia in relation to migrants' experience can also be observed in similar hybrid political regimes. So this was the ambition, of using this term in my book.
Right. So why is Russia such an interesting case to explore when it comes to these issues? Maybe you can explain a bit about the entry ban and its consequences.
And the reason Russia is interesting is, as I said, first, Russia has a different legal culture than the Western-style democracies, and there is a weak rule of law, and corruption is part and parcel of everyday life there. And then what makes Russian cases interesting, that Russia is continuously introducing restrictive laws, regulations, and trying to limit the number of migrant workers, but we see the opposite situation. The more restrictive the laws are, the higher the number of the undocumented migrants in Russia. And this makes Russian case interesting because of the corruption and weak rule of law culture there. Regulations as unintended consequences. This makes Russian case interesting. But on top of that, Russia is one of the top 5 migrant receiving countries worldwide. But when we try to understand the migration theories, especially socio-legal studies of migration, top migration receiving countries like Russia is underrepresented in theoretical and comparative debates. So we see a big research gap both in academic and policy perspective, and then by understanding and investigating Russian case, I wanted to contribute to this knowledge gap and bring something new from Russian perspective, based on the study of Russian example.
Right. And you mentioned the entry ban, which has wide consequences for sort of ex-Soviet states. Can you explain a bit about what that means?
It's entry ban. It's similar to some degree to deportation. For example, if migrant commits more than 2 administrative offense, like you are speeding your car or passing as a pedestrian, passing the road.
So minor infractions.
When it's a red light. It's just very minor, but even for minor administrative offense, even if you pay fine to the state for your offense, you are still facing the second punishment. So you are punished twice. Then, as a result of your administrative offense, you can get entry ban from 3 up to 10 years. So this is very harsh immigration law sanction, and this some scholars compare it entry ban to deportation, right. Because if you get entry ban, you cannot re-enter Russia, and this entry ban system in Russia generated a web of informal practices, and migrants learned how to navigate it, and some migrants are staying longer than they stayed before, because they know that if they go back to Uzbekistan, they cannot return to Russia. So, or some migrants are paying the Russian bodyguards or intermediaries, and they are using illegal channels to enter Russia. So Russia hoped that by introducing entry ban, they would control migration, manage to some degree this undocumented migration, but instead this entry ban system created lots of informal practices around it. And another consequences of this entry ban was that some migrants who were not able to navigate the entry ban, they changed their routes, migration channels to Russia, to Kazakhstan or Turkey. So this also created a new wave of migration flows to other countries as well.
So how did you go about investigating this? What were your challenges? You did field work in Russia. Can you talk about that?
Yes, in my case, I think I myself originate from Uzbekistan, from a rural community, and village where my family lives is a kind of migration village, and then this village is directly connected to Moscow, because some villages are connected to other Russian cities, but there is a kind of chain migration from my village to Moscow. This means, based on my village networks, I was able to easily access different migrant communities in Moscow. This is then I stayed with migrants in their shared apartments. I was there in their workplaces, for example, in construction places. I accompanied them on the street when they were stopped by Russian police, and then when they had to pay bribes. In some cases, I had to go to police station to help migrants when they were sitting inside, and as a result of my village connections, I was able to just in other words, I myself became a typical migrant worker during my field work, because Russian authorities, police, they treated me as one of the migrant workers due to my also Uzbek appearance. So I just mixed in. So this was my strategy. But on the other hand, there were also challenges, because there were also sometimes conflicts among migrants. Then, as a researcher, I had to also be careful with ethical rules, because I cannot be too much part of the conflict, and I had to take a neutral stance. And they were also, my village belonging was a blessing on the one hand, but during conflicts, it was also a kind of created problem for my data collection.
Right, it's a delicate balance. Because you gain their trust by being svoi.
Yes,
as you put it.
Yeah.
Can you explain what svoi is?
Svoi means is a Russian word, and this also originates from Soviet times. Svoi means our own. So that you are part of the community. So you are seen as insider, not outsider. Insider who understands the norms, culture, and then who is not surprised by events happening around. So then I was kind of svoi, during my field work. But this being svoi also created challenge, as I mentioned now.
Right.
Yeah.
So describe the lives of these men. It's kind of a harsh environment they live in.
Yeah, it's a harsh environment. They have to navigate different challenges. They work without any contract. It's based on handshake. So then they have to work many hours, and then in one apartment, for example, it's let's say 60 square meters. 15, 20 migrants live there, and then you just buy mattress space, not room for you. Then you find even the kitchen is used as a bedroom, the mattress space. And then they have to navigate on a daily basis. They are stopped by Russian police on the street or in the public transport. They have to negotiate and give bribes to them on a frequent basis. And on top of this, there is, immigration officials, border guards, and everyone is like, trying to make money in this chaotic relationship. That's why I think when you talk to migrants, they say that there is no order Russia, but we are working under the conditions of disorder. So there is a Russian word called bardak. So Russia is bardak or bespredel, limitless, lawless society. So that's how, and then when there is no rule of law, then people try to create informal norms, and then if you understand the informal norms and unwritten street codes, you are you have better chances of making money as a migrant there. But if you try to follow strictly the laws and regulations, you end up in more trouble. So that's a typical everyday life of migrants. Right. And then many migrants are male, they're Uzbeks. Around more than 70% of migrants are male. And then there is around 25% or 30% of female migrants there.
So it struck me that this, when you read this, you are sort of struck by these very many various levels of informal, formal, the corrupt, the straight line, the rules of even the home village. There's certainly a lot to navigate. How do they manage to do this? How many fall through the cracks, so to speak?
It's now you describe this ideal situation of legal pluralism. This is a multiplicity of norms and rules, and that's why, as a key argument of my book, is that in order to be successful, in order to better navigate, you need to master these different norms and rules, and you need to know what to say and how to act when you are stopped by police or when you are interacting with Chechen racketeers in the street. So you need to understand these rules. If you are not able to understand them, then you cannot get your salary, or you will be deported from Russia, or you can even face physical or threats to your life. So it's a complex situation there. And not all migrants are able to navigate that. But migrant communities, my village members I studied, they were better integrated, because some villagers were sitting in Russian prisons also, and then they understood this, criminal gangs and street norms, and then villages often contacted also migrants sitting in prison, also in Russian prison. And then there was a connection between the streets and then labor market. And then interestingly, that in some cases enforcement of contracts, if you cannot get your salary, for example, you use your village pressure, or you contact your village members sitting in Russian prisons, because they are connected to Russian criminals, criminal authorities, authorities, they say. So these are, complex. Then I was there among, and then this was fascinating. And then I said that this is a Russian case, and then we cannot apply theories or frameworks constructed in the context of West. Russia is something we need to. Then I started thinking about developing new framework to understand migrants in Russian context. This is how I came up with the book title and the framework I developed there.
Right. Still, you make an explicit point of making sure that you assign the migrants agency.
Yeah.
They are not helpless victims in all of this, even though, sometimes you get that feeling.
Yeah.
But you make a point out of that, right?
Yes. At the same time, this Russian system, the corruption, absence of rule of law, on the one hand, it limits migrants' opportunities to be legal, to be documented. But on the other hand, this creates opportunities for migrants to navigate the system. So this means this creates agency. For example, if you are undocumented migrant, if you are illegal here, if you are stopped by Swedish police or immigration officials, you cannot pay bribe, and then they will not let you go, if you are undocumented. Because this means they have no agency. You cannot navigate much in Swedish system, for example. But in Russia, even if you have no papers, you can still negotiate, and then if you pay the right amount, they let you go. If I was there, observing when the transactions between, the migrants and police took place, and then they were released. So this is how I see the agency, that absence of rule of law creates agency, empowers migrants to navigate the system. So this is something that was fascinating for me. So because when you see different publications about migrants' experiences in Russia, you see a victimology approach is so dominant. Most of the publications repeatedly say migrants are victims, victims. But if the situation is so bad, why millions of migrants are still there and working? This was my guiding question. Then I tried to understand there must be some kind of possibilities agency. And then I found agency in the everyday living strategies of migrants, how they navigate the system. So this was a kind of a driving force behind that.
Right. Well, it's a fascinating read. The book is called Migration and Hybrid Political Regimes. Rustam, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you very much.
And thank you all for watching.